Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is one for the history books. We have a World War II Marine Corps veteran on the show. He served in Iwo Jima as a flamethrower. Flamethrowers in Iwo Jima had a 4-minute life expectancy, and this man is the only surviving flamethrower that served in Iwo Jima. His name is Don Graves. He's 98 years old, grew up in the Great Depression, has experienced a lot of America's times, and gives us great perspective of what it was like growing up back then in the greatest generation known to America versus today. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you for all of the support that you give us and all the love. We here at SRS love you too. Without further ado, please welcome Don Graves to the Sean Ryan Show. And one last thing, I want to give a huge shout out to the Air Power Foundation who made this interview possible with Don Graves. Without them, none of this would have happened. Thank you so much. Don Graves, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It is an honor to have a World War II veteran sitting in this studio across from me today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for that compliment.
So, yeah, it's a real honor. I want to give you a quick introduction here. So, Corporal Don Graves, you're a husband. You've been married for 72 years, 98 years old. You're a father, a pastor, Christian, singer, and you were a flamethrower at the Battle of Iwo Jima, World War II, in the United States Marine Corps. Couple of facts for the audience. Flamethrower was the most dangerous job in the Marine Corps. Life expectancy in battle was 4 minutes, 92% casualty rate during Iwo Jima. Graves, you were the only flamethrower from your unit to survive and walk off of that island. Your unit began with 335 Marines, and only 18 left the island of Iwo Jima. No officers from your unit survived.
That's correct.
That's amazing. I'm just humbled to get your testimony on what happened that day. All right, Don, so I'd like to get into the interview, but being 98 years old, you have experienced a lot in life, and you have experiences that not many people have been through. Like, I know you grew up through the Great Depression, and so I'd like to start with your childhood, what that was like growing up in the Great Depression, and then move into World War II, Iwo Jima.
All right.
And then we'll move into what it was like coming home after war at that time period.
All right.
And we'll get into what you were doing afterwards when you became a minister. And then maybe we'll talk a little where the country's headed. And then we'll end it.
All right.
Sound good?
Very good.
All right. So where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Detroit, Michigan, 1925. I came up through the end of the big crash and went into the Great Depression. And President Roosevelt was our president, and thank the Lord he got in when we had that, because he settled, he got us out of it. Nobody had anything. Gas was 10 cents a gallon for your car. My mother used to put 50 cents in, and we'd ride around a little bit. When us kids, we'd chip in some money. We'd have an old car, and we'd chip in dimes, nickels, whatever we had. We'd pull up in front of a pump, and they pumped your gas for you, and they wiped your windshield and everything. You got everything for that dime.
Oh, wow.
And we'd pull up and say, he said, "How much gas do you need there, young fellas?" I said, "Put 50 cents in." He'd look at us. "Yeah, that's 50 cents. That's 5 gallons. 5 gallons of gas. We could last all day on that." So, it was hard, but things were cheap.
How old were you when the Great Depression hit?
The Great Depression? Well, I think it ended in 31.
So you would have been.
I think it ended around
6 years old?
1931. So I was born in 25, so I was just a little tot going through that, you know. I can remember a Christmas. I wanted a trike. There were 2 boys and 2 girls. Not that early, but we total were 2 boys and 2 girls. I had a brother that was 18 months younger than me. And we had to share an old used trike that my mother got out of a trade shop.
Really?
She brought it home to us, yeah. And we would fight over that bike every time. My mother took it away and hit it on us, and that stopped the fighting. But we lived in a cottage. My grandma and grandpa lived on a farm, and they were on commodities. We were all on commodities, welfare, or whatever you want to call it. And that kept them going on the farm. And, you know, it was hard to sell because nobody had any money. The money just wasn't there. And so we lived in the cottage all year round. And, you know, cottages back then on a lake were made of panel, wallpaper, no insulation. And in the wintertime, and, you know, it used to get down in the zeros, you know. And we had a pot-bellied stove, a big one. And we would get that going with wood. We went out and got wood. And we put that going with wood. When it got hot enough, we'd put the coal in there. We got coal in there. And then that would burn all night. And my job was to make sure that that fire didn't go out all night. If it went out, I had a price to pay from my dad.
What was that?
He'd give us a good beating.
Yeah?
Yeah. He didn't mix words with it. He was a mean father.
He was.
I never had a good father, a wonderful mother. My father was a heavy drinker. I don't know. He never had a trade, but he did have a trade. He was a roofer. And you know, roofers drank. Masons and carpet, they all drank. And I don't know why, whether it was the material they were using, the nails or whatever it was, but they'd always leave the job and go into a bar and drink and then not finish the day. When I was a little boy, I went with my dad. He carried shingles up a ladder. Can you imagine? The cedars, they'd drop over your shoulder. I'd carry about 2 or 3 of them. And he would take practically a bundle up there. Well, so we all had to pitch in and work. And we lived on fish. We lived on wild game, rabbits, pheasant, quail. We hunted all the time, all year round. And the game warden never said a thing because he knew we were on, the Depression was on. Nobody had any money. They wouldn't be able to pay a fine if they were fined. So, I mean, but those were good years because we stood together, we loved one another, and we fought together. We just kept things going. Well, the Depression lifted. And we moved in Detroit. My dad started getting some roofing contracts. The sad problem is that he just spent money, and it didn't come to the family. So we still struggled quite a bit. You know, the Depression boys never had good clothes. And that's why we never went to church, because we were ashamed to go into a church.
Oh, man.
And that has a little bearing on my life when I hit the beach at Iwo Jima, which I'll mention. Well, we went to school. I wasn't a good student. I didn't particularly like school. And, it's strange. I hated math. I hated math. And if you don't do math, you don't do well at all because you've got to have math. And I just didn't like doing it. I had a tough time, so they held me back a grade. And then when I got in junior high school, that was a bummer. And when I got in the 8th grade, I was about 16 years old. And I remember the 3 of my 2 buddies, we grew up together in the neighborhood, and we had an old car that was sat in front of the house in Detroit. And we rigged a radio up. It was an old radio. we rigged it up, and we would listen to the big bands. And
What were the big bands
oh,
back
the
then?
big band numbers. Oh, Tommy Dorsey, Jimmy Dorsey, the brothers, two Irishmen fought all the time. And we had, Duke Ellington. He had a black band, great music, good music. And there were so many. Then Bing Crosby, the crooner, he always was on a particular radio show. We'd listen to him. And my grandma bought his recordings on an old Victrola, which you cranked. And as a kid, I spent time playing Bing Crosby, and I'd go sit down, and Bing would be singing. He'd like to, over the river. There was no power left. I had to go and crank it up again. That's what we had to do to listen to a recording. Kate Smith. The big lady, 200 pounds, great American woman. During the war, she introduced God Bless America. Irving Berlin wrote it for her, and she introduced it, and it just went wildfire. Today, nobody sings it unless I have them sing with me. They don't sing it. They don't know it. High school students do not know that song.